Hello, welcome to the podcast AnonX. Today we're doing a deep dive into a really compelling story. The story of Robert the Doll. He's often called the world's most haunted doll, and you can find him down in Key West, Florida. His story, it really blurs the lines between, urban legend and maybe something genuinely unexplained. So our mission today is to unpack the legends, the facts, surrounding Robert, using only the sources we have to try and figure out what makes his story so, well, enduring.
It really is a captivating subject. And Robert himself, he's quite an unusual sight. He's about 40 inches tall, has this worn fabric face, these piercing black bead eyes. And he's dressed in a little sailor suit, supposedly belonged to his owner, Gene. And he's often holding this little toy dog that's frankly pretty unsettling looking, too.
Yeah, that sounds creepy already.
Right. And what's really striking is, despite all the terrifying stories, the things he supposedly asks for are simple. Just be respectful, ask permission before you take his photo. But the stories of misfortune that seem to follow disrespect, well, they're anything but simple.
Unsettling is a good word for his appearance, then. But beyond just looking creepy, what do the sources say about his physical makeup and those first origin theories? He sounds like he wasn't just any old doll from the start.
Exactly. Physically, he's described as handmade, stuffed with something called wool excelsior, I think is another name for it. He's got a flattened nose, one ear's broken, and lots of marks or scars on his face. Gives him this kind of eerie, almost jester-like appearance. Apparently, he was made around the turn of the 20th century. The sources point to the Steiff Company.
Steiff? Like the teddy bear company?
Yeah, the very same one. Which is surprising, right? There's even some talk he might have been originally made for, like a window display, not really as a child's toy.
Okay, so his creation itself is a bit murky, and how he actually got to Robert Eugene Otto, Gene, as he was called, that seems like there are different stories too. What are the main theories our sources talk about?
Yeah, this is where it really splits. There are two main ideas about how Robert ended up with the Otto family. The first one, maybe the most accepted, is that he was a gift from Gene's grandfather, Thomas Otto, bought in Germany around 1904. The idea was he'd be a companion for Gene, who was apparently a bit lonely living out on the family estate there.
That sounds innocent enough. What's the other theory?
Well, the other one is much darker. It's more of a local legend, really. It says Robert was given to young Gene by a Bahamian maid who worked for the family. And this version claims she hexed the doll, used voodoo or dark magic, basically as revenge for being mistreated by the Ottos.
Mistreated how?
Some sources mention abuse, maybe by her bosses, or even that the family let her own child die through neglect or something. It's grim. So this theory suggests Robert was deliberately cursed right from the start. Sets a very different tone.
Wow, okay, so a benevolent gift versus a deliberate curse. Do the sources lean one way or the other, or give any clues about what people believed back then? Either way, it sounds like Gene got attached to him pretty quickly.
They don't really give a definitive answer, which just adds to the whole mystery, But what they do agree on is how intense that bond became, like instantly. Gene apparently fell in love with the doll right away, named it Robert after himself, and then insisted he be called Gene from then on.
He named the doll after himself.
Yeah, and they were inseparable. Gene dressed Robert in his own old sailor suit, spent hours locked in his playroom just talking to Robert, confiding in him like he was a real person.
Okay, that starts out sounding maybe a little intense, but kids have imaginary friends. How did it start to get, well, disturbing for the family?
That's the thing. That innocence seemed to fade, and pretty fast, according to the stories. Gene's parents, they were happy. He was happy at first, but then they got concerned. His whole personality changed. He went from being this shy, kind of sweet, well-behaved kid to someone described as violent, obsessive, really possessive of Robert.
That's a big shift.
Huge. And the really chilling part, Eugene's mother, Maria, reportedly heard a deep voice talking back to Gene from his room. And whenever she asked Gene about it, or about things getting broken or messed up.
Let me guess.
Yep. Always the same answer. Robert did it.
Chilling. Just blaming the doll. And it wasn't just voices, was it? There was more happening in the house.
Oh, yeah, definitely more. The disturbances escalated. They started hearing loud crashes, glass breaking, just general commotion coming from Gene's room at night. They'd find furniture knocked over, other toys literally ripped to pieces. And Gene, terrified, would always point the finger at Robert.
Wow.
There's one really specific story that gets told a lot. Maria found Gene's room totally wrecked, like a tornado hit it. And she didn't even hesitate. Just grabbed Robert, marched him up to the attic, and locked the door. Just wanted it to stop.
So putting him in the attic, did that work? Did the weird stuff stop them?
Well, yes and no. The strange noises and that deep voice. They stopped coming from Jean's room, so that's something. But the activity didn't vanish completely, it just moved. The family later started reporting hearing sounds from the attic itself, like the pitter-patter of feet right above their heads.
Oh, great. So Robert's locked away but still making his presence known. Okay, let's jump ahead. Jean grows up, goes to art school, gets married in Paris to Annette, then his parents pass away, and he and Annette move back into the Key West house. And Jean, now an artist, does something kind of baffling.
Right. He goes up to the attic, gets Robert, and brings him back down. And he doesn't just pry him down, he puts him in the window of his art studio, where everyone walking by could see him.
After everything that happened, why did the sources say?
No clear reason given, just that he did it.
Mm.
It's perplexing, isn't it? And, surprise, surprise, the alleged activity starts right back up, or at least reports of it. Neighbors started saying they saw Robert moving in that window.
Yeah.
Sometimes he'd disappear, then reappear. Sometimes his eyes seemed to follow them.
Okay, that's creepy. What did his wife, Annette, think?
Annette was not a fan. Apparently strongly disapproved, which led Jean to put Robert back in the attic again. But then comes this really weird part. Robert allegedly retaliated.
How does a doll retaliate?
According to the stories, he started appearing in Annette's dreams, threatening her, threatening Jean, until they agreed to put him back in the window seat. And supposedly, after they put him back in the window, the paranormal claims about the house actually stopped. Even after they had kids, like he'd won or something.
That is incredibly specific.
Yeah.
And disturbing. So Robert stays in the window. What happens after Jean dies in 1974? Does Robert stay with the house?
The house gets sold to a woman named Myrtle Reuter, and she finds Robert up in the attic. But instead of being freaked out, she apparently thought he was adorable.
Adorable, seriously.
Yep. So she took him out. She even kept him for about 20 years, took him with her when she moved house later on. But Myrtle wasn't immune. She also started experiencing weird things. Robert moving by himself, hearing footsteps at night. And apparently his facial expression would change, like from a smile to a scowl if guests said anything bad about Gene Otto.
So the doll's reputation followed him, even with a new owner who initially liked him. After 20 years, what made Myrtle finally give him up, and what about the original house?
Well, after 2 decades, Myrtle finally decided she'd had enough. In 1994, she donated Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum, and she specifically told them he was haunted. Interestingly, she died just a few months after donating him.
Wow. And the house. The artist house.
It's now a bed and breakfast, and according to the sources, there are no current reports of any paranormal activity there.
That is interesting. So maybe the activity really is tied to Robert himself, not the location.
It certainly raises that question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did he take it all with him?
So he arrives at the museum. End of story. Or did things continue there?
Oh, definitely not the end. His arrival at the Fort East Martello Museum apparently didn't quiet him down at all. The museum staff, they were pretty skeptical at first, as you might expect. But soon enough, they started reporting their own inexplicable stuff. Hearing those pitter-patter footsteps at night.
In the museum.
Yeah. Seeing his facial expression change. Even finding him in slightly different positions inside his sealed plexiglass case in the morning. Like he'd somehow gotten out, wandered around, and then put himself back, but maybe not quite in the exact same spot.
Okay, finding him moved in a sealed case is pretty compelling if true. The consistency from different people is striking.
It is. And this period at the museum is really where the idea of Robert's curse solidifies and becomes widely known.
Right, the curse. Tell us more about that. What kind of misfortunes are we talking about, affecting staff and visitors?
It seems to be a whole range of things. Some museum staff reported personal troubles, marriages failing, relationships ending badly, unexplained illnesses. But it gets even creepier with visitors. People who apparently mocked Robert or took photos without asking or were just generally disrespectful. They reported all sorts of bad luck afterwards. Losing jobs, relationships breaking up, car accidents, strange falls. Even in some extreme claims, death. And often the problems were described as being weirdly tailored to the person or their specific act of disrespect.
Tailored, that's a weird detail. So like specific punishments, do the sources give examples or just talk generally?
Mostly general descriptions, but the tailored aspect implies a kind of targeted misfortune, not just random bad luck. The sources emphasize this pattern, reported by many different people. It got to the point where the museum felt they had to put up a warning sign.
A warning sign for a doll. What are the rules then?
Yeah, basically outlining the etiquette for visiting Robert. You're supposed to greet him, introduce yourself, and crucially, ask his permission before you take any photos. Now, some sources say this photo rule is more legend than official policy, but it's a very strongly held belief among visitors. And then you're supposed to say goodbye when you leave, break the rules, especially the photo one, and you risk bad luck. Some people even claim their cameras or phones malfunction only when pointed at them.
Asking a doll for permission. It's incredible how much power people attribute to him. How does the museum handle all this? Is there actual, physical evidence of this curse people talk about?
Well, evidence is tricky, but they have things that show the belief in the curse is very real and ongoing. There's actually a whole wall near his display covered in letters. Apology letters.
Apology letters to Robert.
Exactly. Thousands of them, apparently arriving almost daily from all over the world.
Wow.
People writing to apologize for being disrespectful, begging him to lift the bad luck they believe he caused. People also leave him gifts, candy, money, sometimes even joints, apparently.
What?
The museum even keeps a logbook, recording the accidents and misfortunes people claim happened to them after visiting Robert. And here's a really interesting twist. They also use Robert as an ambassador of encouragement.
What does that mean?
Kids who are being bullied sometimes write to Robert, and the museum staff, acting as Robert, send them back little gifts or notes of support. It adds this whole other kind of positive layer to his story.
That's unexpectedly wholesome, in a way. Okay, so beyond the museum walls and the letters, Robert's story has obviously spread. What's his impact on wider culture?
Oh, it's significant, especially in the world of paranormal pop culture. He's a staple on ghost tours in Key West, a major tourist draw. He's inspired books, countless TV show segments. He's definitely a minor celebrity in the spooky world. But it's important to clear up that common mix-up. He wasn't the inspiration for Chucky from Child's Play.
Right, you mentioned that. That was based on something else.
Yeah, the creator of Chucky said he drew inspiration from some old Twilight Zone episodes and maybe your anxieties about marketing and dolls aimed at boys back then, not Robert. However, there was a movie actually called Robert, released in 2015, which was loosely based on his story. So he has his own film, just not that one.
Gotcha. So with all these stories, the history, the alleged curse, what are the different ways people try to explain Robert? Are there scientific takes or psychological ones mentioned?
There's a whole spectrum of perspectives. Obviously, many people genuinely believe he's cursed or haunted, full stop. Interestingly, even the museum's curator, who deals with him daily, expressed some uncertainty in one source, sort of viewing it as just part of her job, but sometimes admitting she wonders if Robert, allows her to work there.
Oh, that's telling.
Other theories float around too. One is psychometry. Basically, the idea that Gene Otto, being so intensely connected to the doll for so long, transferred a huge amount of emotional energy into it, which now radiates outward. Or people go back to that second origin story, believing the voodoo curse is completely real and still active.
Any actual scientific tests mentioned?
There's one mentioned in passing. Someone apparently used an aura camera on him. The results supposedly showed blue energy linked to peace or love at the top, and purple energy linked to magic or spirit at the bottom, which just adds another layer of ambiguity rather than explaining much definitively.
Right, more mystery fuel. So Robert's definitely a standout, but he's not totally unique in the world of creepy dolls, is he? Do the sources put him in context with others?
They do mention that he exists within this wider folklore of haunted objects, especially dolls. Annabelle is probably the most famous comparison that comes up. And Chucky, of course, even if the inspiration link isn't direct, he's part of that cultural conversation about scary dolls. But the sources are clear. Robert's story is distinct. He's not just like Annabelle or Chucky. He has his own very specific history and alleged set of rules and behaviors. He's part of a tradition, but also uniquely himself.
Okay, so bringing it all together, for you, our listener, what are you left with? We've heard these consistent accounts, spanning over a century, of strange phenomena. We've heard about the pattern of misfortune, the letters, the rules. Is Robert the Doll just a really effective urban legend, fueled by suggestion and maybe some coincidence? Is he a focal point for Gene Otto's own troubled energy, perhaps? Or could he represent something genuinely unexplained, a mystery that just defies easy answers? Maybe the really unsettling question isn't if he's haunted, but why so many people for so long have felt compelled to believe he is. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.